I went to Milpitas Grammar School, and from there my father gave me the choice of either going to Presentation High School, Santa Clara High School, or to James Lick, because my mother could continue to drive me there to Milpitas or James Lick, so I could be with the friends that I had met in grammar school. But I chose Santa Clara High School because the bus would pass by the ranch, which was on Highway 237. At that time it was route number 2, right? Highway 237, yeah. Anyhow, so I went to Santa Clara High School. The first day my mother dropped me off there was a very lonely day. I didn't know a soul, but by the end of the day I had met some people and I was fine. And so I graduated from Santa Clara High School. Then I went to San Jose State, and 4 years later I got my bachelor's degree, and then I went another semester to finish up a credential to teach secondary. It was a French and Spanish major, so I wanted to teach French and Spanish. Then I taught several years at Saratoga High School, and then I got accepted at Santa Clara University for my master's degree, and I majored in French, and with several visits to France back and forth, I finished my master's in a year and a half working full-time. That was not easy, but I was determined. And I think the goal orientation that my father and my aunt and my mother had set for me worked for me. So then at Santa Clara High School, I finished that in a year and a half, as I just mentioned, and finished the thesis. Then I taught for a few years at Ohlone College and Saratoga High School, both teaching at Ohlone in the evening because they had a freeze on hiring and they couldn't hire me full-time. So then I started getting interested in getting a PhD, but I didn't exactly know what I wanted to get the PhD in, the doctorate. So at first I looked into law school, and I also looked into art history. But I decided that or even French, but I didn't want to do that, so I got interested in bioenergetics and somatic therapy, and then I got interested in finishing up a master's. So I went back to Santa Clara High School, took many classes in psychology, and then I started applying to graduate school for the doctorate, and California Graduate School of Family Psychology was in Marin. And they said they accepted me, and I did not have to finish the second master's. They said one master's is enough, you know, you've done well. So I started taking classes, and it was my decision to go part-time and work full-time. So I worked full-time at Saratoga High School, part-time at the college, and then later I would go to the library and do research on the weekends and evenings. And so I graduated after 8 years. I think it was 1990 when I graduated. And my dissertation, the dissertation is your final project that you work on for several years doing research on. And I chose my dissertation topic to be the father-daughter relationship. And I wanted to do the positive side of the father-daughter relationship. So with my 3 variables of my dissertation and all the research I had, I proved that the daughter, if she receives a positive psychosocial functioning and non-sexual affection, and there was another variable, right? It escapes me, that she will go on to being, to finish her career, whatever that might be. And often, and there's a variable in there that says that if she chooses a career that is closely aligned with her father, it's because her father was able to give impetus in her growing up and give advice and talk with her, and that she was accepting of that. And also there's a piece of that with the mother, that the mother also it was okay with her to see that the father was talking to the daughter, maybe, in the evening, when she wasn't jealous of that or anything. She was very comfortable in her own marriage with the man. So all that had to do together. But anyway, once I finished my dissertation and got my doctorate, I found that it opened a lot of doors for me. At that time, I left teaching and I went to work in San Jose for Gardner Community Health Center. And then after that, I worked at Agnew's Developmental Center. There's a hospital there that used to be an insane asylum many years ago. In fact, when I was a little girl, the hospital was located not too far from my dad's ranch, one in Agnew's and one in between Milpitas and Alviso. And my parents had told me that if I ever heard that siren, to run home right away because someone had escaped from Agnew's. Well, little did I know that years later I would be working there. So I was a psychologist there at Agnew's. I received my 3,000 hours of required work under the supervision of another psychologist or several other psychologists. And so I finished there and I worked there for 3 years, past the 3,000 hours long. I had finished that a long time ago. And then I went to work at Stanford University. So my doctorate opened up a lot of doors for me, but it was a lot of work, and I was goal setting all the time, and I was very determined to finish. My aunt and my dad and my mother were very instrumental in how I lived my professional life and how I got there. So Josephine was ready to do to defend my dissertation, I guess 1990, and she came with me. I didn't think that she was going to go into the room to listen to what they were asking me, but she did. She said hello to everybody. She was always very friendly, and she said, "May I come in and sit in?" So I thought, oh God, my aunt here. But, it went okay. I answered all their questions, and the discussion was very lively. And so then they asked her many questions, and she just started talking about how I was very goal-oriented and accomplished a lot, and that, she was very proud of me, and I mentioned, well, I'm very proud of you. So she also gave some stories that I didn't want her to relate, but she did. And so my professors there were very glad. They thanked her for coming in, that she gave a lot of feedback and a lot of information about how this dissertation could affect others and in a positive way. So it turned out okay. Yeah.
When I was attending City College, I needed an extra 3 units to complete my course studies, so I managed to find a photography class, and not realizing what I was going to be doing in that class, I signed up for the class. I met the instructor, Ed Schuster, and we became best friends while I took the 4 classes that he taught. I graduated from Samuel Air High School in '67. Ed Schuster had told me about the school, Brooks Institute, and at the time I was thinking that it was too far to go to Santa Barbara. But as my career in photography started, I got more and more interested in it, and then decided to study it at school. So besides Ed Schuster, I had to talk to my dad about going to school and wanting to change schools. And so I let him know that I was interested in pursuing a career in photography. And he didn't take to that idea. The only thing he could think to tell me is, who's going to pay you to take a picture? And but by then I had researched areas that a professional photographer would take, and there was architecture, there was illustration work being done, and it was only going to get better, I thought. So my father, through coaxing by my uncles, changed his mind and allowed me to go to Santa Barbara and supported me throughout that change. After 3 years of being in Santa Barbara, I came home. The bad news about coming home after my graduation is my father was taken ill, and he had cancer. So I came home to him not being able to see my graduation because he couldn't travel it by then. And that was hard for me. And then one day Ed Schuster, my photography instructor at City College, called me and said, "We have an opening. How about coming down and teaching for us?" So I took him up on that idea, and I spent, I think, 8 years teaching part-time while I grew my business. And then one semester, I was surprised when I'm teaching, my aunt shows up in class along with my sister, and they both took my class. Now, my aunt had been, at that point in time, for her, she had already met Uncle Bob, and the two of them were flying around any chance they could get. So a lot of the weekends she was gone, and she never finished her work. So I had to, I didn't give her any slacks. I let her do it until the end of class, and I might have given her a D. I had been teaching part-time at City College, and they had this one year, I don't remember the year, but they had cutbacks. So they cut my classes, and I was out of that job. And so to make ends meet, I started looking elsewhere, and I found there was an opening in Livermore at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. And anyway, I went out for an interview there, and they liked my degree, and I got along with everyone, so they hired me. And I put in 23 years there doing scientific work. While I was there at Lawrence, one of the jobs I was able to get onto was photographing the astronaut Jose Hernandez. He had been hired there, and so they called me in to photograph him.
I also took my brother's class, and we went on some excursions all around. And one day, one weekend, a date of mine and I went to Yosemite, and Joe and his date went to Yosemite also with us. And he took pictures of me. And in the studio, he wanted to have some pictures of snow and other weather-related photos. And so he had a picture of me in his window, along with other things. And one of his students was passing by, and he said, "Ah, I know that girl. I knew that they had something going on." And of course, he didn't know that we were brother and sister, but I took the class. But I finished the class.
Well, Josephine used to call my kids her angels, and because she passed on, I think my oldest was around 28 when Josephine passed, and my younger one
Elise.
was, 4 years younger than her sister. But Josephine, when Winter was born, my oldest, she came into our house in Milpitas to babysit, to allow my wife to finish her credits as a state. So she jumped right in both feet, as she did everything else, and she gave them, I think, the do it now attitude.
Tell me
We're
that
sitting
story.
in the house that she bought because my girls moved to Los Gatos, and she was left in Milpitas by herself, because our houses in Milpitas were like 2 doors apart, so it was easy access either way. But when we moved out here, it was because of the school systems. We thought at the time, with Milpitas wanting to do double sessions, it wouldn't be as good as a single session, that we could manage them here. So we made the move to do that, and Josephine waited, I think, 3 months before she finally came up to us and said, "I've just bought a house in Los Gatos." And we didn't even know she was looking to move.
Josephine and I were thrilled to babysit. I was thrilled to babysit because I never had children of my own, and I loved taking the girls and taking them different places. And then Josephine and I started traveling with the girls, and also another girlfriend of mine and I took the girls, and we took them to Paris, we took them to Spain, we took them to Italy, took them to Hawaii, Mexico. I wanted to open their world for them and not just be in a little enclave and think that was their life. And Josephine was right then in there with me, also exposing them to many things and many interests. And she would pick them up from school here in Los Gatos once she was established here in the house in Los Gatos. And they went to Hillbrook, and she would pick them up, and she'd have something for them to eat, and she'd say, "Start your homework right now, come on." So they would work, and then sometimes I would pick them up. At that time I was a psychologist, and so I could manage a few hours. I could come and pick them up, take them to my office, and we had a little kitchen, and I'd buy them something to eat, and then they'd come later and they would play psychologist in the room where I did the therapy. And so they've done it very well, and I think that we influenced them greatly. They both attended Hillbrook. They were 4 years apart, but they both graduated from Hillbrook here in Los Gatos. And then they both graduated also 4 years apart from Mitty High School. And after Winter, who's the oldest, went to University of the Pacific in Stockton, and she received her bachelor's, and she graduated in 4 years. And then Elise went to Santa Clara University, got her bachelor's after 4 years, and then decided to go back to school for 1 year. She added another year and got her master's and her credential to teach. And the little one now, Elise, is a teacher, a kindergarten teacher in Mountain View, and is going to be getting married in June. And the oldest one, Winter, lives in San Francisco, and works as the director of marketing for the DeYoung Museum and also the Legion of Honor. Prior to her job as at the DeYoung, she was working at MoMA, and she had several positions in marketing for MoMA. And she started there as an intern. She wasn't getting paid for about a year, but she would travel from Los Gatos to San Francisco, and because she loved museums and loved museum work and loves marketing. So from there, I think Joe and Tina, my sister-in-law, Tina, were on vacation, and the girls joined them. I think they were in St. Martin's Island, and Winter received a call from DeYoung that they wanted to hire her. So she was thrilled because it's a larger foundation, larger museum, and so she's been there for several years now. MoMA is the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco.